Okay, let's unpack this Thunderbolts movie. It's just landed, and wow, there's a surprisingly strong wave of positive reactions coming in.
Yeah, it's noticeable, isn't it? Especially when you put it next to some of the more lukewarm receptions we've seen lately from Marvel.
Totally. And that asterisk in the title, Thunderbolts, definitely makes you think.
It does.
We'll park that thought for now. Maybe circle back, see where this deep dive takes us.
Sounds good. What's really fascinating, just straight out of the gate, is how consistent the critical response seems to be.
Right.
We've been sifting through a bunch of reviews, trying to, nail down exactly why Thunderbolts is being called such a breath of fresh air.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, we're pulling from reviews from NPR, People Magazine, and Rotten Tomatoes, all published right around the movie's release, May 2nd, 2025.
Right, so a pretty good mix, different perspectives, news outlets, aggregators, gives us a solid look at what people are thinking.
Our mission today, essentially, is to figure out the core reasons why critics are saying this feels like a positive shift for the MCU. What specific things are actually, resonating?
What's making it click?
Yeah. And for you tuning in, think of this as your quick guide, your cheat sheet. We're trying to cut through the noise, give you the key takeaways on why this movie's generating buzz.
Okay, so where do we start? The big picture.
Let's do that. What's the overall vibe from these early reviews?
Well, the overarching feeling is definitely pretty upbeat. We're seeing phrases like refreshing hit, decently effective, even a genuine breath of fresh air. Several critics are pointing to it as one of Marvel's more successful efforts in recent memory.
Okay, that's strong praise.
And it seems this focus on, flawed characters, morally gray areas.
Yeah.
Maybe that signals a bit of a maturing in the storytelling, moving beyond just pure heroes.
That's got to be encouraging for a lot of people, right? Especially if you remember the chatter around Captain America Brave New World earlier this year.
Yeah,
The critical temperature there felt noticeably cooler.
definitely. Which kind of brings up the question. Is Thunderbolts maybe a course correction? Some critics seem to lean that way.
Suggesting Marvel's rediscovered that spark, maybe?
Potentially. It's being framed by some as, a possible turning point, a sign they can still capture lightning in a bottle.
But it's not all unanimous praise, is it? We did see one slightly more reserved take.
That's true. There was one review calling it good enough, but only until what they described as a climactic collapse.
Ooh, okay. Climactic collapse. What do they mean by that? Any hints on what went wrong for them at the end?
Well, it's important to have that balance, right? This review sort of hinted that the ending lost focus, maybe felt a bit rushed or didn't quite match the character work that came before.
So the journey was good, but the destination maybe didn't quite stick the landing for that particular critic.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
But okay, let's shift to what the majority are praising. What elements are consistently getting high marks?
Well, first off, it sounds like the characters, and crucially the actors playing them, are really connecting. Critics keep mentioning thoughtfully fleshed out characters.
Absolutely. And Florence Pugh as Yelena, she's getting a lot of praise. Again,
No surprise there, really.
reviewers are talking about the real gravitas she brings, the vulnerability, this unexpected emotional weight. It sounds like a darker, more complex take than maybe we saw in Black Widow.
She just keeps stealing scenes, doesn't she? It's becoming her thing.
It really is. And Louis Pullman as Bob Sentry, he's being called a real discovery. Some are even saying he's the best part of the movie.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
What's making his performance stand out so much?
It seems to be the complexity. Critics appreciate how he portrays a character with several sides. He's menacing, but also deeply sympathetic. And they're highlighting how the performance really digs into the impact of untreated mental illness. That duality seems to be hitting home.
That sounds like a really welcome layer of depth, something we don't always get in, these big blockbuster movies.
Exactly. And Wyatt Russell as John Walker, U.S. agent, he's also getting good mentions. Another strong performance.
So the ensemble really works. They clicked.
It sounds like it, which leads into the themes, maybe. What's the movie actually about?
Good question. Beyond the team-up stuff.
Well, this focus on mental illness and bruised psyches seems to be emerging as a pretty central theme. And critics are calling that a significant shift for the MCU.
How so? What are they saying specifically?
Words like thematically fascinating are popping up, describing it as a film that's about more than just defeating a villain.
Which feels needed.
Maybe.
After so many giant skybeam threats?
Perhaps, yeah. It feels more internal, more character-focused, different stakes.
Right.
There's even mention of genuine thematic ambition. One review, get this, drew a parallel to the philosophical ideas in Doctor Strange by referencing Søren Kierkegaard.
Whoa, Kierkegaard, seriously, in a Marvel movie, that's unexpected. What was the connection? Anxiety. Yeah. Choice.
The review didn't go super deep into it, but the mention itself suggests the film might be touching on similar existential themes, inner conflict, search for meaning, that sort of thing. But within a superhero context, obviously. And they do acknowledge it might only scratch the surface.
Sure, it's still a blockbuster.
Right. But the fact that it's even attempting that ambition is being seen as pretty noteworthy.
Okay, so strong characters, surprisingly deep themes.
Huh.
What about the actual filmmaking, the script, the story? How's that holding up?
The screenplay by Eric Pearson and Joanna Callow is getting a lot of positive comments.
Yeah.
Smart and amusing, raw, emotionally grounded.
Grounded keeps coming up.
It does. Critics seem to feel this is a key difference from some recent Marvel stuff. They're pointing out unexpected vulnerability and character depth.
So prioritizing the human element, making these kind of out-there characters feel more, well, real.
Exactly. It feels like the consensus is the film really understands that old saying, character is king, story matters.
And the spectacle works because of that foundation, not in spite of it.
That seems to be the idea.
Yeah.
So the groundwork character's story sounds strong. But what about the flashier stuff, the action, the visuals?
Yeah, that's still a huge part of the appeal for these movies, right?
Definitely. And we are hearing about spectacular visuals and engaging action sequences.
Okay.
What's interesting is the praise for some action being captured in camera, using practical effects and well-choreographed stunts.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, giving it a more grounded feel compared to maybe some super heavy CGI sequences we've seen elsewhere in the MCU.
That can make a difference. Sometimes wall-to-wall CGI feels a bit weightless, less impactful.
That's a good way to put it. And several critics actually mentioned that the hero's limitations, like the fact they aren't all flying gods, made the action more entertaining, more suspenseful maybe.
Because the stakes feel more real for them.
Possibly. Though there was one minor critique about some action and low-light scenes being a bit murky.
Always something, I guess. But overall, visually, it's a thumbs up.
Seems like it. It's being called one of the best-looking MCU films in recent years. They mentioned top-flight VFX creating a realer world and beautiful cinematography.
Even with that muted, graying, gloomy color scheme some mention.
Apparently so. It sounds like the look serves the story and the tone.
Okay, so visually strong, action works. What about the overall tone, the feel of the movie? Is it just standard Marvel, or does it carve out its own space?
Yeah, there's a real emphasis on Thunderbolts having a different look and feel. That keeps coming up.
Different how?
Critics are pointing to a different energy, that grounded sensibility again, and just generally saying it's a welcome change of pace.
That word refreshing seems key to its reception.
It really does. And the whole dysfunctional team-up thing is getting a lot of attention.
Like Guardians or Suicide Squad?
Exactly like that. Favorable comparisons to Suicide Squad, but with the note that this is, like, done right. And definitely echoes of the Guardians vibe.
That chaotic, found family kind of energy.
Precisely. There's also talk about the film having self-conscious fun, positioning itself as a kind of dark Avengers riff. It sounds pretty self-aware.
That could be fun for fans, that meta layer. What about humor? Marvel always has jokes.
The general take seems to be that it strikes a good balance. Just enough humor to give some relief in what's apparently a darker, more serious movie overall.
So it's not undercutting the drama for laughs.
Doesn't sound like it. Critics are specifically mentioning comedic gold in interactions between, say, Ghost and Red Guardian, and also involving John Walker. So the humor lands, but fits the tone.
Okay, this is painting a really positive picture overall. Let's zoom out again. Is the movie doing any meta commentary, saying anything about the MCU itself?
You know, interestingly, yes. Some critics are reading it as a story about redemption and second chances.
For the characters?
For the characters, yeah. But they see it as a kind of fitting parallel to the MCU itself, given the recent, ups and downs critically.
Huh. That's a clever take. And what about the classic Marvel villain problem? Does Thunderbolts sidestep that?
There's some optimism there. Julia Louis-Dreyfus's Valentina Allegra de Fontaine is being called out. An interesting and threatening woman villain who you'll love to hate.
Okay, so she provides that pull for the anti-hero.
Yeah, the necessary gravitational pull, as one review put it. Someone even suggested the villain might be an overt metaphor for something larger.
Intriguing. Hopefully more than just world domination plans.
Seems that way. Now, while it's mostly positive, there are a couple of potential downsides mentioned recurringly.
Okay, like what?
One is about pacing. A specific critique mentioned the first two acts maybe could have been more tightly edited.
Pacing can be tough with these big ensemble casts. Lots to juggle.
True. And then there's the fact that we know these characters are coming back in Avengers Doomsday.
Right, the big crossover event.
Some critics felt that knowing they'll return might lessen the immediate stakes within Thunderbolts itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it potentially lowers the tension if you know they survive.
And a few also felt that some of the tie-ins to the bigger universe felt a bit inauthentic, maybe a little forced.
That's always a balancing act, isn't it? Serving this story versus setting up the next 10.
Definitely. But despite those minor points, the general feeling about seeing these characters again seems pretty high.
People are excited for more.
Yeah, comments like audiences will eagerly anticipate their return, that they fully deserve another outing. Though, fair enough, one critic wasn't quite as hyped for their future.
So, mostly positive anticipation. What does this all mean for the MCU going forward? Is this film seen as like a sign of hope?
That seems to be a major takeaway, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of critics are framing it as that potential course correction.
Yeah.
Much needed success to
Yeah.
maybe get some momentum back.
High hopes then for Fantastic Four and the next Avengers to keep that ball rolling.
Absolutely. A lot seems to be riding on those.
Mm.
Now, we absolutely have to talk about the post-credit scenes. People magazine got the scoop.
Always crucial. What did they reveal? Lay it on us.
Okay, so the mid-credit scene sounds pretty funny. It's apparently Red Guardian just completely thrilled that the Thunderbolts, or wait, the new Avengers, as Valentina calls them.
She renames them. Oh, boy.
Yep, that they're on Wheaties boxes.
Huh. That's perfectly Red Guardian. Love it.
Totally in character. But the post-credit scene, that sounds like it has much bigger implications.
Okay, what happened?
It shows the team kind of settling into Avengers Tower, operating as these new Avengers.
Taking over the tower. Bold move.
Right. And apparently Bucky mentions having some tense chats with Sam Wilson, Captain America, about using the Avengers name, especially since Sam had his own plans post-Brave New World.
Ooh, okay. So potential conflict there. Team Cap versus Team Val.
Could be. But then the scene takes a turn. They get an alert. A massive spacecraft appears, heading for Earth.
Uh-oh.
And it's got a huge 4 on it.
No way! The Fantastic Four arriving now from the 60s.
That's the strong implication, directly linking to the Fantastic Four. First steps in setting things up big time for Avengers.
Doomsday. Wow. So the timelines are about to smash together.
Looks like it. And people also reported the Doomsday cast list. And it is stacked.
Give us the highlights.
You've got the Thunderbolts cast, the Fantastic Four cast,
Yeah.
and the big one, Robert Downey Jr. back as Victor Von Doom,
Wait, RDJ as Doom, not Iron Man?
as Dr. Doom. Plus, actors from the old Fox X-Men movies and a ton of other Avengers regulars. It's shaping up to be absolutely massive.
Okay, my head's spinning a bit. So Thunderbolts isn't just a good movie on its own. It's a critical launch pad for this huge next phase.
That's exactly what it looks like. Bringing the Fantastic Four into the present MCU,
Yeah.
that changes everything.
Right. So wrapping this up then, it sounds like Thunderbolts is hitting that sweet spot for critics. A welcome win for Marvel.
Yeah, exactly. It's getting praise for the characters, the deeper themes, those standout performances from Pugh and Pullman especially.
Even with a few familiar franchise bumps like pacing or tie-ins.
Even with those, the overall vibe is overwhelmingly positive, refreshing, grounded, character-driven.
And for you listening in, hopefully this deep dive gives you a really solid sense of why Thunderbolts is getting this positive reaction and why it feels pretty significant for what comes next in the MCU.
Which brings us to maybe a final thought for you to chew on. You've got the Thunderbolts acting as these new Avengers, maybe
Yeah.
clashing with Sam's team. And now the Fantastic Four literally dropping in from another era, all heading towards Avengers. Doomsday.
Yeah.
What kind of wild dynamics, what conflicts are going to erupt when you throw all these disparate groups together? And maybe more broadly, what does this messy, complicated new landscape tell us about what it even means to be a hero in the MCU now?